released me. Your soul was racked by fear and weakened by confusion, but you overcame that.
You had doubts. Your soul was racked by fear and weakened with confusion. But you overcame that. You are the true son of Trigon. She was a vessel, nothing more. My daughter. I can't tell you how glad I am to see you. I've thought of you.
I've obtained the amber.
Excellent.
Just one question. What are you planning to do with this?
I do not pay you to ask questions. All you need to know is a new dawn is breaking. 100 will give their lives so that just one may live. I am expediting that change.
So, we're talking millions of casualties.
Billions.
You're listening to the Talk Shop Podcast, Episode 4, with your host, Richie Tavaki, and special guest, Craig Burnatowski. Thank you for tuning in to the Talk Shop Podcast, Episode 4, and I'm very excited to introduce everyone to a voice that you probably have heard in a plethora of video games, Mr. Craig Burnatowski. He has done work on video games such as The Division 2 as James Dragov, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and more recently, Albert Wesker in Resident Evil 4 Remake, as well as plenty of other games. Not only has he done games, but he has also done live-action TV for shows such as DC Titans as the voice of Trigon. He also has his own band called the Shining 90s. It's a great interview, so tune in to it right now and watch gameplay of the level that he is a boss of in The Division 2. Welcome back to the podcast, people, and today I have the awesome Craig Burnatowski with me. How's it going, man?
Hi, Richie. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for agreeing to do that. So, before we get into talking shop about things, because you've done a lot of prolific work, what are you playing right now?
I'm playing Alan Wake Remastered.
Nice.
I haven't. I loved Control, and they just had a sale for Alan Wake Remastered, which I'd never played before. So I'm playing through that right now.
Nice. And then they got the new Alan Wake on the way, I believe, as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Nice. So now that we got the video games out the way, tell us, what do you do as a voice actor, and especially some of the roles that you have, because they're very significant.
I think that the biggest thing that I've done, which was for about 5 years, I was the voice of Jeep. Mm-hmm. So for every commercial in Canada, TV, radio, I was doing hundreds of commercials for Jeep. Nice. So that kept me. I was doing that right into the pandemic. I've done, I guess, probably more than half a dozen games. Watch Dogs 2, Watch Dogs Legion, a couple of Assassin's Creed games. I was one of the bosses in The Division 2. As a big demon boss in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Nice. And then the biggest one lately is Wesker in Resident Evil 4 Remake.
Wesker for Resident Evil 4 Remake, which is great, because when I looked at that, I was like, oh, wow, he's Wesker. Wait, we're at 4. If they go into 5 things, it'd be great to hear you come back again as this iconic villain. So with that being said, because you played, like you said, you're a boss in Division 2, James Dragov, which is the first role that I remember seeing you in. Now, when you approach villain characters, what is some of your processes behind them? Like, how do you go about it along with the direction you're given from the director?
Games are an interesting thing because, especially bigger ones, because often you really don't get a lot of information. Like I didn't know I was auditioning for Resident Evil. I didn't know I was auditioning for Wesker. I didn't even know it was Capcom until I had booked the role. So like it's all under code names. It's all under the scenes are fake. The names, the character names are fake. So you get what you're given, and you've kind of really got you have to have a huge imagination, because you have to swing wild and hope that the choices that you're making are going to be applicable to things that you really don't know. Like you've just got to make big choices and big guesses, and then hope that they like what you're doing. Really.
Nice. Yeah, definitely. And would you say training as an actor really helps make those expand that range?
Yeah, I went to York University in Toronto for theater. I had a lot of really talented friends around me, and in first year I was really intimidated by them. And then that course was exactly what I needed. So I went out. I left university being really excited to do stuff, and I worked right out of university. I worked on Resident Evil Outbreak. So I did 6 months of motion capture for that game back on PlayStation 2. That was like 15 years ago.
Nice.
But yeah, that course was definitely something that I needed.
That's good. Motion capture. So speaking of motion capture, what is your experience when it comes to the motion capture? Because from what a lot of people understand, it's the combination of voice acting along with stage acting.
So for Resident Evil Outbreak, which was years and years ago, that was strictly motion capture, and that was a different animal. So what used to be the process was the voices were recorded, the voices were edited. We would have these scenes, and the scenes would be played on a ghetto blaster, and we would be in the outfits, and we would be acting it out like puppets. And so we really. It wasn't even a union gig at the time, if I remember correctly. But now it is. So performance capture now is so much more advanced, and you're with the actors. You can see the actors. You've got all kinds of props. They will build structures that represent the stage. So like I've shot scenes where I was on a water tower, and we have stairs leading up. I did motion capture for a TV show where I was coming out of this vat of lava, and they'd built a whole construction thing around me that I was coming out of and going back into, but you basically you get to actually interact with people now, which is really, really fun thing to do, and you couldn't do that back then.
That's awesome. So you mentioned that vat of lava. Was that Trigon from Titans?
Yeah, totally, yeah.
I saw that. I was like, oh, wow. Like, it's just coming out of that giant vat, that looks like Trigon, Raven's father, and it is really cool to see that. And then you provide the voice for that, too. So you have the interaction, and then they comprise it all into the scene that we see at the final product.
Yeah, that was a fun couple of days. I was there when they were shooting the live action stuff, and they gave me a microphone. So I was standing in the cavern, and the guy was acting with a tennis ball that was up high, like I was playing an 11-foot demon. So they had this big tennis ball up there, and then my voice was booming in through the caverns. So yeah, it was, and they were dropping foam debris and stuff like that every time I was making noises. And then we did the motion capture in the volume at Ubisoft,
nice.
Which is also in Toronto. Yeah,
that's pretty cool. So with that being said, we went through the process of this. What are some of the trends that you're noticing that are either on the up or down take, whether it be in commercial, video games, those kind of things?
Video games are, it's obvious with the way that Resident Evil has been leaning into much more heavy realism I mean, my favorite games are games like The Last of Us and God of War that have I used to play online multiplayer games, but they're not really my jam anymore. Like I really like getting into a story,
Yep.
and the first single player narrative character driven games are just every year there's something that's bigger and better and greater. I can't wait to see what Naughty Dog does next. They're fantastic.
Definitely, yep. Naughty Dog's some of my favorite stuff. I grew up on that, and like you said, now we're at the point where things are more interactive. Uncharted, for example, one of my favorite game series, and then The Last of Us as well. And then we see the TV show The Last of Us as well. So we're talking about that. Then also too, you mentioned you get scripts, and for video games, it's just a complete unknown. You could be reading a cookbook for the next AAA title, for all you know.
Yeah.
What is your process when you approach these kind of scripts?
Well, I mean, you can see I've got my own booth here. So that right there is a voice booth that I built out of PVC pipe, and there's a microphone in there. I'm like, you can't see my gear behind the camera right now, but that's my voice recording booth. These are lights for shooting self-tapes. I don't go into studios and do self-tapes. I don't actually even use readers, which I know is a no-no. But I've got a lot of, I do all my own video editing and audio editing. I've got a lot of experience in tech. So I do all of my auditions. I shoot myself. I leave space for the voices, the other characters. And then I go and I stand behind the camera and I play the other characters as well. So when I edit it together, I mean, if you're looking for it, you can tell that I'm the reader as well. But the goal is that it sounds like I've got a reader in the room. So I've got a little bit of a step ahead of other actors that are just not really embracing the self-tape process as much as I've been. As far as like choices and stuff for characters, it really depends on what I'm doing. I play a lot of bad guys, so I play a lot of mainly cops, thugs, and most recently bouncers. So I played a bouncer in a Netflix movie last couple months ago, and I'm playing another one in a TV show on Thursday this week.
Got a whole packed schedule to take over the world, huh?
Yeah.
That's nice.
First, I got to let them into the club.
Yeah, exactly. So we got audition process. So what is your audition process when you're like auditioning for things? You're sent something, and then do you just like spend hours on it and think, okay, what do I do? Or do you like not go super fast, but go fast, not spend hours on it, but at the same time, you take what you need, you make your choices, send it off and forget it?
Definitely send it off and forget it. That's the main thing. I think I'll sometimes there's 5 auditions in a week. Sometimes there's nothing for 2 weeks. But basically, as an actor, you have to be ready to be rejected multiple times a week, and you have to be okay with that. So if you send in an audition, and every time you send in an audition, you're losing sleep, and you're worried about every single one of them. I mean, like big things come, and they're hard not to think about them. But basically, yeah, put the work in, do as good a job as you can on it, send it in, and then that's it. That's the end of your job. Until you find out you've got a callback or you've got something else, then yeah, forget about it. Sometimes you get 24 hours to do a tape. Sometimes you get 5 days. For longer scenes for television and film, sometimes you get a few days, but most of the time it's I've got maybe 24, maybe 48 hours to get an audition done. So I've got an app on my phone where I will record. It's Line Learner, I think it's called,
Right.
and I'll record all the characters, and then I'll play it back, and I'll be listening to it until I can do it without the script. And I'll often I'll record as soon as I'm off book, so that my first impulses are the ones that I get, and I try to get it done in as few takes as possible. Usually,
Got it. Yeah,
basically for me. Yeah.
That's a good point. Is keeping the takes to a minimum so it doesn't become, I guess, ancient at that point. To the point it's like, oh, they read through it like 20 times.
Yeah, I mean, the closer I can get it sounding like it's the first time coming out of my mouth, as opposed to I've been rehearsing these words and it just sounds like they're memorized. Like that's yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So you've studied in stage as well. Since you mentioned you went to New York and Toronto, what are some of the things that because I hear all the time from people, I want to get into acting, I want to do this, and they want to jump over the whole point of either training or just like going over to a nearby college and applying to theater. What are some of the things that you took from there and then that have served you well?
Everybody's journey is going to be completely different. What works for me is not going to work for everybody else. There's a couple of people that were in my acting class that at university that are real big stars, and like what worked for them is not going to work for me. There's a couple of people that got kicked out of the program and are now some of the biggest names working in business. Like it's just, for me, it was, especially with voice stuff, it's figuring out what works for you. And I personally have to be willing to listen to myself.
Right.
Some people will do a TV show, do a recording, and then never want to listen to it because they get embarrassed by it. Some people can't watch themselves on film. I usually watch myself because if I can't watch myself, then why should somebody else? Basically. So yeah, my goal is usually to every time to try to do less of the things that I'm bothered by.
Right.
So whittling away all the things that I consider weaknesses and getting better and better at the strengths, really.
That's good. It's just it's the process at that point.
Yeah.
So commercials, because you mentioned you were the voice for Jeep for quite a number of times, and as most people who work in the industry know, commercials tend to pay the bills. How did you get involved with commercial in general?
I have a lot of experience in recording studios.
Mm-hmm.
So like I've been recording albums with bands since the 90s, basically.
Okay.
Back before everyone, like when I was starting out, most people didn't have their own booths at home. Most people didn't have their own gear. And so getting to go into voice auditions when you don't have much experience, most people have at the time had no mic technique, had no experience in studios, would freak out. And I've always been pretty comfortable with microphones, so I wouldn't say I did a lot of commercial stuff at the beginning, but I definitely booked a couple little things. Animation is really hard to break into, so I've only done a couple of animated shows. But yeah, I think that just having mic experience was really helpful for me.
Mm-hmm.
The Jeep thing was really crazy because like I didn't know how big that was at the time. I thought I was auditioning for one commercial.
Mm-hmm.
And so I booked it, and I went to go into this recording studio. And normally when you go to a booking, maybe there's a director, maybe there's an engineer, but that's about it. And I go into the studio, and there's like 15 people all in this room. I'm like, what is going on? And everybody's sitting around like eating stuff. And I'm like, what is happening? And this guy comes over to me and goes, "Hey, congrats." I was like, "Yeah, thanks, man. Awesome." And he goes, "No, I'm sorry. You know that we auditioned Toronto, Vancouver, LA, and New York and picked you." And I was like, "No, I'm sorry. No, I did not know that." And then it turned out that it was a whole campaign. It wasn't just one commercial. So it was like every month they were calling me to do a bunch more. So yeah, I got a lot of experience at that point.
That's nice, and I'm sure that sounds exciting too. You're the voice for this really prominent company, which is Jeep, and then they're like, yeah, you won over about 3 to 4 different cities that we went and auditioned for. That's
Yeah.
great. Thanks.
Yeah, it was pretty cool, and it was on all the time too. Like every time I went to a bar, the commercials are like every time there's a sporting event, there's it's on 15 times during the game. It was pretty surreal.
Yeah, I'll bet. It's like, hey, I did that commercial right there. It's like, oh, we
Yeah.
just missed a touchdown. Yeah, but you saw my commercial right there. Thanks. So, one of the other things is network building, which is a very prominent thing. What are some of the ways you advise people to build their network, whether it be social media, interacting, things like that?
If you don't have a lot of experience, if you didn't go to school like I did for it, take classes, find a peer group. I took so I did Resident Evil the years and years ago, Outbreak, and then I was casting and directing a video game for a bunch of years as well, and then when I got back into auditioning myself, I was doing everything I could to try to get noticed by people at Ubisoft and stuff like that. So I was watching any kind of time that they were doing talks or workshops and stuff like that. I was signing up for everything I could.
Right.
There was I don't believe that it's being held anymore, but there was a workshop called MoCap U that was being jointly put on with a guy that that's with my agent, and it was in collaboration with Ubisoft. So I did that course and met. I think actually that's how I got the Assassin's Creed once. It was from the contacts I made doing that. But yeah, I mean, network and learn at the same time. So like take on camera classes, especially if there's something that casting directors in your city are putting on, so that they see who you are, they get to see your work. That's really helpful.
Yeah, I totally agree. The network, and also too, it's you went to these things to get prepared, and then when the opportunity showed up, you were ready. So if they said, "Hey, we're doing an audition for like Assassin's Creed," you're there. It's like, I'm ready. I have the skill to do this. I'm confident enough to take the step. Let's just give me the opportunity. We're good. Correct?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's good. So, other than that, because you don't just do voiceover, you do voiceover on camera. Like at this point, you're covering a lot more spectrums than just one thing. Whereas a lot of the people that I run into, they, like you said, animation's hard to break into. They're like, I want to be in animation. They're like, but yeah, but you have to. I want to be in animation. Yeah, but you also. It's like, okay, things. How did you end up expanding from the stage onto the microphone, and then even do music at the same time?
I paid to get my first voice demo made. I went to a studio, got someone to help me pick scripts, got a director, and they produced my first demo reel. But that one was, which is what you're not supposed to do. It had a little bit of animation, had a little bit of commercial, it was just all over the map, and it wasn't a useful demo that would get me work.
Right.
I guess it did though, because I think I ended up doing a couple commercials out of that, and I pared it down. So I now have a commercial demo reel, I have an animation demo reel, I have a video game demo reel, I have an audiobook demo reel, I have a singing demo reel, and you can even pare it down even more than that. So I know some people that specialize in voice that have 6 different commercial demo reels that are, they're one for each tone. Basically, show everything you can. So I've got a website that has all of my personal stuff on it, but other people have been using actors' websites or SoundCloud or whatever, but some kind of showcase to get your stuff out there.
Right. Yeah, definitely. you hear all the time that a website is like the core of what it is you're going to feel out to other people. So if you give them a business card, it's where they go to see what it is you have. And it's important. I've seen your website, and it's extremely specific now to, like, this is a video game, this is which I'll link the website as well, but also too.
Yeah, I need to update it. It hasn't been updated in at least a year. So I've got to update my demo reels and get Resident Evil on there and a couple other things on there too.
Yeah, sounds good. So speaking of Resident Evil, since you're Wesker now, and I do hope you continue to be Wesker, when you found out you were Wesker, of all people, you were Wesker for the modern era at this point, what, like, how did it feel? And at the same time, what was going through your mind? Like, oh my God, I thought I was reading a cookbook when I was reading probably a cookbook for Ouroboros.
I found out the morning I started recording it. So they flew me to Vancouver. Mm-hmm. I didn't know. I was guessing what it was, but I really didn't know for sure. Mm-hmm. I was kind of hoping it was that, but I didn't even know that it was Wesker because it was a code name.
Right.
And the scenes that I auditioned for were not things that are kind of what you would expect Wesker to be doing. So, yeah, I had very little time to deal with that information before I was thrown in to start doing it. So I think I would have panicked a lot more if I had, been sitting at home being like, oh my God, I'm not doing this for another month, stressing out about it. But it was just like, wow, okay, that's what I'm doing. Let's go, let's do it. So I waiting for a year and a half to find out how it was going to be accepted, or if people were going to like it, was a long wait for sure.
And then also, like, there's that. Then when it was under NDA, I'm pretty sure it's like, okay, we finished recording. Like, great, but the game won't be out for probably the next 6 months to a year. So
yep,
don't talk about it.
Yep, couldn't talk about it at all. Couldn't tell my parents what it was. Couldn't tell anybody. Yeah. So it was, the only people I knew was I knew Nick, who played Leon. So I had his contact info. So every once in a while I talked to him about it, but he was the only person I could talk to.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So shifting from voice acting, you also do music too. How did you get into music, and have you found things in music that really help you or have helped you even bring up your game more than it already is in the voice acting game?
I started playing in bands in high school. So in grade 9, in where I went to school in Oakville, everybody was a musician. So when I was in grade 9, there were 10 bands at my school, and everybody was playing new music. Every 2 months we would have a coffee house, and it was just what everybody did. So I recorded and released my first album in '94. I've joined 3 bands from Craigslist ads. I've recorded, I think, 5 original albums. Right. But we never did cover music until 2015. A drummer that I'd worked with asked me if I wanted to start a cover band with him, and he convinced me to do it. And now that's turned into one of the most fun things we do. So we play. I'll back up. When I was doing original music, it was really hard rock stuff. I could do about 45 minutes before I would totally blow my voice out. And I had a habit of writing stuff that was too hard for me to sing. So I would just, I would push and push and I'd be done in 45 minutes. When we started doing the cover band, we were playing 3-hour-long sets. So I had to find new ways of singing. And I was more confident to say, no, the song's too high or the song's too heavy. I don't want to do this song. So I was able to veto stuff. But that experience of extended yelling, screaming is like, for voice acting, it's really, really intense stuff. You'll do a 2-hour voice recording session, and it'll end with you've got to be screaming like you're on fire for 30 seconds. Like they'll save all of the really big stuff for the end, but it'll be shot in the chest, shot in the leg, shot grazed in the leg, and it's all yelling and screaming and yelling and screaming, and then you're on fire, and then you're falling, and then so I've got a pretty good ability to sustain that kind of stuff that not a lot of people do because of my experience in bands, really. So with sustained screaming vocals, it helps for yelling in recording studios.
Yeah, that's also what I've heard. It's like, hey, we'll save the screaming till the end of when we get all the lines out the way, which is why I found it strange, because my last gig about a few weeks ago was in a recording studio for an audiobook, and they said, okay, cool, start yelling. I was like, whoa, what? Yeah, start yelling.
Whoa.
We didn't even do the lines yet. I was like, all right.
You did an audiobook?
Yeah.
Last week?
I did.
I just did my first audiobook last week as well.
Nice. So I can't wait to hear it too, because I remember you mentioned it, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. And then later on, I ended up booking, because I did a play last year. They said, we're going to do the audio drama version. Would you like to reprise your role? Because
cool.
I played the bad guy. At the same time, I was like, oh, yeah, sure. And then there was the scheduling. Once that was sorted out, they're like, all right. And that was my first experience in the studio, which was amazing. And then they said, start yelling. I was like, you sure about this? So I was like,
sounds like it was their first experience in the studio, too.
Exactly. So, yeah, but we got through it. My voice was fortunately not damaged. But it's like...
How long were the recording sessions for the...
They did that all in one take, and since it was, they did that all in one take, so we spent 3 hours. Fortunately, I wasn't yelling for 3 hours, but when it came to...
Oh, it wasn't just you, it was like a bunch of actors for 3 hours?
Yeah, they
put
us in a big studio, which was also new, in that they mic'd everyone up, or everyone had a mic that was part of the scene, and just divided it by scenes. I was like, oh, this is cool. And then... I started yelling. People are like, "Oh man, I gotta wear earplugs around you." I was like, "Hey, you give me a mic, you better believe I'm gonna commit right now." But it's
that's great.
It's like you said. It's there's that yelling, and the normal process in the industry is we'll save all that for later, so we have your voice at least for the lines beforehand. Versus start yelling right now. It's like, okay. So what would you, I guess, advise actors to do aside from just training? But what are some of the things you would tell actors to either avoid that could potentially not help them in their career, aside from yell immediately and not pay attention to your voice?
I mean, my path isn't going to work for everybody. I became a union actor really early, and I think it would have been easier for me to build up a resume if I didn't jump right into the union, and I was able to do more non-union stuff, because it took me a long time for me to have demo reel footage. Right. Because once I was a union, I couldn't do student films and stuff like that. So it took me. I was a union actor for quite some time before I even had a demo reel that I could really use. Right. So I think that. In retrospect, that would be one path that I would choose differently. Yeah, I mean, just getting as much experience, even if you're not getting paid for it, is when you're starting out, is really, really useful. Do fringe festivals, do student films, do anything your friends are doing that they need some help with.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's also why. It's one of the reasons why I asked that question to other people who come on the podcast that I've been recording with, and they said the same thing. Get involved as much as you can, so that when those big opportunities show up, you know internally, I got the experience to deal with. I can deal with this. Versus, I'm extremely new to this. What do I do? Okay, start touching the microphone. Don't touch the microphone. Start doing a bunch of stuff that people aren't supposed to be doing. So, with that being said, you have that. We talked about network. We talked about your process right here. And like you said, it'll be different for everyone. But now, at least, hearing your story about it, they can decide what it is that might work better for them versus what doesn't.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's pretty good. So I guess the other thing to ask is, what is it that really drives you to become an artist? Because you don't just do voiceover, you don't just do on camera, you do all of that in music. What is it that really?
I absolutely love performing. I like being somebody else. Like if I don't have a band, I end up at karaoke. like I in between bands. I just really love doing it. I always have, and that's. I mean, when I was going to school, and I would be involved in every play I could be involved in. Now the band keeps me busy enough because like bookings for acting. I mean, I'm not booking every week. I'm not booking. Like I've done a bunch of things this year, but I mean it's been slower since coming out of the pandemic. But performing the band keeps me on my toes and keeps me excited about doing stuff. So I've been taking as many acting courses after the like workshops and stuff like that after the pandemic. I was taking a bunch before, but I haven't been doing that. But I feel that my performance skills are staying on the edge with how much my band is performing, honestly.
That's good. Yeah, that's definitely good. And then the other thing you mentioned, the union, because a lot of people, I had a question earlier, just when Metal Gear Delta got announced, someone said, how do I throw my hat in for that? And I looked at them, I was like, are you part of the union? No. Do you have experience? I just started. I was like, well, there's a whole lot of things that go along with that. What are some of the things that go along with getting involved in the union? You already mentioned if you join the union, that cuts off it cuts off at least half the work that a person has because you can't do student projects, or it becomes harder to build a resume. What are some of the things that the union to joining the union when they finally get to that point? They're like, I'm ready.
So I'm part of the stage union and the film television unit, and I have been for years and years. So I'm trying to remember exactly what my entry was. So I think that at the time I was getting apprentice credits for theater shows I was doing, and I think I had a couple film credits that were apprentice credits. Like you have to buy into the union. And at the time, that was the goal. Like it was get into the union as fast as possible. That poster is for Hair. That was the musical that I did in 2006, and I believe that was the show where I needed 2 more credits to be a full union member, and the union bought me in so that everybody that was part of that show were full members of the union. And I think that at the time that got me into the film union as well.
Got it.
And it's been a while, so I have to look back at my email to see if that's completely accurate. But I think that was the path that it took for me. And I think at the time you needed 6 credits to become a full union member.
Right.
Does that answer your question? I don't know if I kind of derailed.
No,
my
you're
thought.
good. Yeah, you're good. Because now I think they dropped it to 3, and then some fee of like $3,000 to join the union for SAG-AFTRA. But no, I think that explains it. You discussed how.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on right now with the writers' strike, and there's a lot of negotiations happening in Canada with commercial agreements. I am not an expert on union, and I don't claim to be, but I've been doing a lot of reading right now because there's votes happening, and I want to be informed. But I also I don't want to talk too much about it because I shouldn't be someone that's used as a source of knowledge, because I am not one of those people.
No problem. But your story is, I think, one of the best things that people were
for sure
trying to start this out should hear. It's
definitely. But there's a lot of movement happening right now, so it's people should be keeping an eye on the news, really.
Yeah, I agree. That's right. People read up on what the writer's strike is and how it affects literally everything involved in this industry. So
yeah, it really does. And AI too. Like everything is changing right now. Everything is exciting and scary.
Yeah, we're
basically
a very shifting time for the industry, which is interesting. So that being said, where can people find you at?
I'm on Instagram at Craig Burnat. My website is www.craigburnatowski.com. I have a Twitter account, which I barely use, which is Craig Burnat as well. And my current band is Big Shiny 90s, which is bigshinynineties.com.
Nice. Sounds good. That being, again, Craig, thank you. I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
My pleasure.
And sharing your story.
Yeah, for sure.
It's cool. Hit that like, subscribe button. You can find the links to Craig